Hello students, welcome to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. Today we are going to discuss law of supply and law of supply schedule analysis. So, law of supply, we have seen this is same as demand supply, law of demand or demand schedule. It's slightly different in terms of the relationship. Where we said when we discussed about demand, it is a negative relationship. Price increases, demand falls, right? It is a negative relationship. Or your prices comes down, demand increases. That is where we said the demand curve also negatively downward sloping. Similarly, your law of supply and law of schedule, if you see, law of supply states that as the price of commodity increases, the quantity supplied increases and vice versa. This principle called ceteris paribus. You remember this term? In economics, we use two terms majorly. One is ceteris paribus. Sometimes we may not be able to tell explicitly that other things are constant. It can be understood. While discussing certain factors, we have to see that only those factors we are discussing. So that is where the ceteris paribus. The another is we use a lot of assumptions. So ceteris paribus, assumptions which are the key for any kind of theory to understand. Now here supply curve is positively upward sloping. Why upward sloping? Supply curve, if you see, it is an upward sloping. Why? Because as we discussed, price increases, supply also increases. That is the reason if you see in the table 10, when the price of commodity was a 10, the quantity total supplied units is 5, then subsequently 20 price, 10 supplied, it's almost increased. Now 30, 15, 40, 20, 50, 25. So proportionately it has increased, where you can see some of these individual supply quantities at each market supply. This is a supply schedule. Basically what you see in the table is a supply schedule. So that's where you will see that some of individuals supply quantities at each price. Market supplies equals to QA plus QB plus QC. That is the aggregate of all producers. So this also there can be an extension and contraction. When will be extension? The supply curve extension. Price increases, your quantity supplied also increases. In that case, what will happen to the supply curve? It can be movement up of the curve, right? If you visualize the graph from original curve, suppose say SS curve, from there to new curve S1 S1 moving upward. So that's where you call it as a extension of the supply curve. Contraction of the price. When the price is declined, quantity supplied also declines. The movement of the curve is the downward. Okay, it will shift towards the left side. It is not going down. Whenever it goes, the quantity supplied will be, it is moved to the new curve called S2 S2 towards to the left side from the original curve. That's where you will find this extension and contraction of supply curves. So the no price factor cause shift rightward, which will increase, leftward decrease in supply. So here we are saying contraction extraction. Please remember, not in terms of price, it is in terms of supply, because for the demand the price may be important. Why it is done? While we discussing supply curve, please remember that non-price factors causes shift, not the price causes shifts. So that's where the rightward when it will increase, when the supply increases, leftwards when it decreases the supply. So the law of supply and law of the supply schedule, which is essential for us to understand in the market how different producers are able to supply various kinds of goods and services at given different prices. So the price act as a major motivation or a driving factor to the price, it's not, the supply induces the price to make. So that's where the overall your law of supply works. So you have already, remember we have talked about the supply determinants, how the supply is determined. So here supply increases, decreases with the response to the change in the prices. So that's where we can remember that the law of supply and law of schedule in the real time in a better way. So in the law of supply, we need to remember that there are a lot of theories called, JBC also says, supply creates its own demand, right? Please remember, Professor JBC says supply creates its own demand. So that means as you increase your production, so the demand automatically will be created. So in that sense, that producers, if they are able to produce a quality goods and convinces the consumers, people can buy more of such commodities, which will be increasing. So the supply also will depend on majorly on the principles of elasticity also. You may be saying that, sir, is it any kind of commodity can we increase our supply with simple reason? No. Here also, like we have discussed about different types of elasticities, law of the elasticity of supply also applies. I hope you remember the term called elasticity of supply. Here also there can be 5 types of elasticities of supplies. That is again supply elastic, supply inelastic, unit inelastic, perfectly elastic, perfectly supply elastic, perfectly supply inelastic. So these are the 5 categories. How it responds, it changes over a period of time. So accordingly, we can estimate our supply based on how it is quite responsive to the change, which are more important, will be discussed as part of that, right? So in the supply, it is exactly, you ask in the market also, when more of supply, on what circumstances the supply can be increased, how even producers get sense of the indications of more products has to be supplied. So this would help you to understand in a better way in the market how supply is creating its own demand. So further, whenever if somebody is interested, you can see that this lot of supply side theories as well for better exposure and understanding of the supply side of economics. Thank you.